The rain never stopped on Orith 7. It fell in thick sheets that turned the ground into mud and soaked through everything. Taiho had been on this planet for 6 months now, and he could not remember what it felt like to be dry. He lay on his thin sleeping mat inside his tent. The fabric above him was torn in 3 places. Water dripped through the holes and landed on his chest, his face, his legs. The drops were cold. They smelled like metal. Taiho did not move. He had learned that moving only made things worse. If he shifted to avoid one leak, he would find another. Outside, the jungle made sounds all through the night. Strange birds called to each other. Insects hummed in clouds so thick they blocked out the moons. Something large moved through the trees, its footsteps shaking the ground. Taiho did not know what it was. He did not want to know. Camp 14 held 300 human prisoners. They came from different ships, different missions, different parts of Earth's colonies. Some were soldiers. Some were scientists. Some were just ordinary people who had been in the wrong place when the Velith came. Now, they were all the same. They were workers. They were property. The Velith were tall. Their skin was gray like stone, and their eyes were black with no white in them at all. They moved slowly and spoke in low voices that sounded like rocks grinding together. They did not hate humans. That would have required them to think about humans at all. To the Velith, humans were tools. Tools did not need comfort. Tools did not need hope. Tools only needed to work. Every morning, the prisoners woke before the sun rose. They ate a meal of paste that tasted like nothing. Then they marched into the jungle to dig. The Velith wanted a mineral that grew deep in the ground. It was purple and glowed faintly in the dark. Taiho did not know what they used it for. He only knew that digging for it made his hands bleed and his back ache. Taiho had been an engineer before all this. He had built bridges and buildings and machines. He had solved problems for a living. Now, he dug holes in the mud while guards with electric sticks watched him. Sometimes he forgot what his old life had felt like. Sometimes he could not remember his mother's face or the sound of his sister's laugh. The jungle was eating his memories, one day at a time. A new transport ship arrived that evening. Taiho watched from the edge of the camp as the prisoners walked out in a line. There were 40 of them. Their clothes were still clean. Their eyes were still bright. They did not know yet. They did not understand what this place would do to them. One of the new prisoners was a young woman with short black hair. She looked around the camp with sharp eyes, studying everything. When a guard pushed her forward, she did not stumble. She kept walking with her head up. Taiho noticed her. He noticed that she was not afraid, or at least she was good at hiding it. Another new prisoner was a girl who could not have been older than 22. She had a soft face and gentle hands. She was carrying a small bag that the guards had not taken from her yet. She looked lost. She looked like she wanted to cry, but would not let herself. There was also an older man, with gray in his hair and scars on his arms. He walked like a soldier. He looked at the guards the way a predator looks at prey. Taiho could see the anger in him, burning like a fire that would not go out. That night, Commander Dreth called all the prisoners together. Dreth was the head of Camp 14. He was taller than the other Velith, and he wore a metal band around his arm that showed his rank. He did not shout. He never needed to. When Dreth spoke, everyone listened. "There will be new rules," Dreth said. His voice was flat and cold. "We have seen that some of you are building. You are adding to your shelters. You are digging trenches. You are making walls." Taiho felt his stomach tighten. He had helped build a small wall around his tent last week. It kept some of the water out. "This will stop," Dreth continued. "You are prisoners. You are not builders. Any structure beyond the tents we give you will be destroyed. Any tools you make will be taken. Any human who breaks this rule will be punished." The prisoners stood in silence. Rain fell on their heads and ran down their faces. No one spoke. Dreth looked at them with his black eyes. "You are here to work. You are here to dig. You are not here to live. You are here to serve until you cannot serve anymore. Then you will be replaced. This is the truth. Accept it." He turned and walked away. The guards pushed the prisoners back to their tents. Taiho found his shelter in the dark. He crawled inside and lay down on his wet mat. The holes in the fabric still dripped. The ground was still mud. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had changed. They were taking away the last small things that made life bearable. He thought about the new prisoners, the woman with sharp eyes, the young girl with gentle hands, the soldier with burning anger. They did not know yet what this place would do to them. In a few weeks, they would learn. The light in their eyes would fade. The strength in their bodies would break. The hope in their hearts would die. But something happened to Taiho that night. Instead of feeling despair, he felt something else. It was small and quiet, like a seed buried in the ground. It was anger, not the hot anger that made people do stupid things. This was cold anger, patient anger. The kind of anger that waited. The Velith thought humans were simple. They thought humans were weak. They thought that taking away tents and tools would break the human spirit. But Taiho remembered something from his old life. He remembered that humans had survived ice ages and droughts and plagues. He remembered that humans had crossed oceans on wooden ships and climbed mountains with rope and bare hands. He remembered that humans were very good at one thing above all others. Humans adapted. Taiho lay in the dark and listened to the rain. He looked at the holes in his tent and the mud on the ground and the jungle pressing in from all sides. He thought about Commander Dreth and his cold voice and his black eyes, and Taiho made a promise to himself, a silent promise that no one else could hear. He promised that he would find a way. He did not know how yet. He did not know what he would do, but he knew that he would not accept this. He would not break. He would not die in the mud like an animal. The rain kept falling. The jungle kept making its sounds. Somewhere in the camp, a prisoner was crying. But Taiho did not cry. He closed his eyes and began to think. Tomorrow would be the same as today. He would dig in the mud and eat the tasteless paste and sleep in his leaking tent. But something inside him had changed. Something had woken up, and the Velith had no idea what they had started. 2 weeks passed. Taiho learned the names of the new prisoners. The woman with sharp eyes was called Minji. She had been a biologist on a research station near the outer colonies. She studied plants and animals on new worlds. When the Velith attacked her station, she was one of 12 survivors. Now she was the only one left. The others had died from sickness or exhaustion or beatings. Minji had survived because she watched and learned and never gave up. The young girl with gentle hands was called Hannah. She was a medic. She had joined a supply ship to help colonists on a new planet. She had never expected to see war. She had never expected to be captured. But even here, in this terrible place, she tried to help people. She cleaned wounds with dirty water. She held hands when prisoners were dying. She whispered kind words when there were no words left to say. The soldier with burning anger was called Sunwoo. He had fought the Velith for 3 years before they caught him. He had killed many of them. He was proud of that. But he was also tired. His body was covered in scars from battles he could barely remember. His mind was heavy with memories of friends who had died. He hated the Velith with every part of his soul. But he did not know how to fight them anymore. Taiho brought them together on a night when the rain was quieter than usual. They sat behind a storage building where the guards could not see them. The 4 of them looked at each other in the darkness. "I have a plan," Taiho said. Sunwoo laughed, but there was no happiness in it. A plan? What plan can work here? They have weapons. They have ships. They have everything. They do not have everything, Taiho said. They do not understand us. He explained what he wanted to do. It was simple. They would improve their shelters slowly, carefully, using materials from the jungle. They would dig drainage trenches to keep water out. They would weave grasses to strengthen the tent fabric. They would build walls of packed mud that would dry hard in the rare moments when the rain stopped. Minji nodded. It could work. There are plants here that could help. I have been studying them. Some have leaves that repel water. Some have fibers stronger than rope. Hannah looked worried. But Commander Dreth said no building. If they catch us, "They will not catch us," Taiho said. "We will work at night. We will hide what we do. We will make it look like nothing has changed." Sunwoo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Why should I trust you? I do not know you. I do not know any of you." Taiho met his eyes. "You should not trust me. But you should ask yourself this question. Do you want to die in the mud, or do you want to live?" Sunwoo did not answer, but he did not leave. They started that night. The work was slow and dangerous. Every sound made them freeze. Every shadow made them think a guard was coming. But the guards did not come. The Velith did not watch the camp closely at night. They thought the humans were too weak and too scared to do anything. Taiho and Sunwoo dug trenches around their tents. The trenches carried water away from the sleeping areas. The ground inside became drier. Minji collected plants from the edges of the jungle. She found vines that could be woven together like cloth. Hannah helped strengthen the tent fabric with layers of dried leaves. After 1 week, Taiho slept through a whole night without getting wet. It was the first time in months. He woke up feeling stronger than he had felt in a long time. Other prisoners noticed. They saw that Taiho's group was not as tired as before. They saw that they walked straighter and worked harder. Word spread quietly through the camp. More people wanted to know what was happening. More people wanted to join. By the end of the second week, 50 prisoners had improved their shelters. They helped each other in secret. They shared materials and knowledge. For the first time since they arrived, they felt like they were doing something. They felt like they had a little bit of control over their lives. But the Evelith noticed too. Commander Dreth ordered an inspection on a morning when the sun actually broke through the clouds. Guards walked through the camp with their electric sticks ready. They looked at every tent. They checked every corner. Taiho watched from the edge of the work group. His heart was pounding, but he kept his face calm. He had known this might happen. He had prepared for it, but he had not prepared for what came next. The guards did not just find the improvements. They destroyed everything. They tore down the mud walls with their bare hands. They ripped apart the woven grass covers. They filled in the drainage trenches with dirt. They moved through the camp like a storm, leaving nothing behind but broken fabric and scattered materials. Sunwoo tried to stop them when they reached his tent. A guard hit him with an electric stick. The shock knocked him to the ground. He shook and screamed while the other guards laughed. Hannah ran to help him, but another guard pushed her away. She fell in the mud and did not get up. She just lay there crying quietly while the rain started again. When it was over, Commander Dreth walked through the ruined camp. His feet splashed in the puddles where the trenches used to be. He stopped in front of Taiho. "You thought you were clever," Dreth said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "You thought you could build your little walls and we would not notice. You were wrong." Taiho said nothing. He kept his eyes on the ground. Dreth leaned closer. "Let me tell you something, human. You are not people to us. You are livestock. And livestock does not build. Livestock does not create. Livestock endures. Livestock suffers. Livestock dies. That is all you are good for." He straightened up and looked at all the prisoners gathered around. "Remember this day," Dreth said loudly. "Remember what happens when you forget your place. You have nothing because we allow you to have nothing. You live because we allow you to live. Never forget that." He walked away. The guards followed him. The prisoners were left standing in the rain with nothing but the torn remains of their shelters. That night was the worst night Taiho could remember. The rain was heavy and cold. The wind blew through the camp in strong gusts. There was no protection. There was no shelter. The prisoners huddled together in groups, trying to share body heat, but it was not enough. By morning, 2 of the older prisoners had died from the cold. Minji found Taiho sitting alone behind the storage building. Her clothes were soaked. Her hair was stuck to her face, but her eyes were still sharp. "Still angry? What now?" she asked. "They destroyed everything. They will destroy anything we build." "What do we do?" Taiho looked at the jungle. It was so close. Just a few meters away, the trees stood tall and thick, their leaves blocking the rain. The vines hung down like ropes. The moss covered everything in soft green layers. The jungle did not need buildings. The jungle was its own shelter. They said no structures, Taiho said slowly. They said we cannot build. But they said nothing about the jungle itself. Mingy frowned. What do you mean? Taiho smiled for the first time in weeks. It was a small smile, tired and worn. But it was real. We are not going to build shelters, he said. We are going to grow them. Minji stared at him. Then understanding lit up her face. She looked at the jungle, at the vines, at the thick green plants that grew so fast in this wet world. It could work, she whispered. It could really work. Taiho nodded. Let us find out. Taiho spent 3 days watching the jungle before he touched anything. He watched how the vines grew. They moved slowly, but they never stopped moving. They reached for light like hungry fingers. They wrapped around trees and rocks and anything else in their path. They were strong. Taiho saw a vine split a boulder in half over the course of a single afternoon. The jungle was alive in a way that earth forests never were. Minji helped him understand what he was seeing. She had spent her life studying alien plants. And even though the Velith had taken her equipment and her notes, they could not take her knowledge. That one is called a water vine by the other prisoners, she said, pointing to a thick green rope that hung from a tall tree. It stores water inside its body. You can drink from it if you are careful. But be careful. If you cut it wrong, it dies. And that one? Taiho asked, pointing to a different vine. This one was darker, almost black, and it had small thorns along its length. I call it iron vine, Minji said. It is very strong. The fibers inside are almost like metal wire. It grows fast too. 1 meter per day in good conditions. Taiho nodded. He was building a picture in his mind. An idea was forming, piece by piece, like a machine coming together. On the 4th night, he started his experiment. There was a rock formation at the edge of the camp. Where the jungle pressed closest to the prisoner area, the rocks made a small natural shelter, but it was open on 3 sides. Water poured in during heavy rain. No one used it because it was actually worse than the tents. Taiho saw something different. He saw a frame. He found young iron vines growing near the rocks. They were thin and flexible, not yet hardened into their adult form. Working carefully, he bent them without breaking them. He guided them up and over the rocks, creating an arch. He wove smaller vines between them, building a mesh. Minji brought him leaves from a plant she called the shield tree. The leaves were wide and thick and coated with a waxy substance that made water roll off. She layered them over the vine mesh like tiles on a roof. Hannah found moss that grew in thick clumps on the north side of trees. It was soft and warm and helped hold the structure together. She packed it into the gaps between the vines, creating insulation. Sunwoo stood guard. His body still ached from the electric stick, but he refused to rest. He watched the camp for guards and listened for any sign of movement. His anger had found a purpose. By the time the sun rose, the shelter was complete. But it did not look like a shelter. It looked like a pile of wild growth. It looked like the jungle had simply decided to cover the rocks. No one walking past would think that human hands had shaped it. Taiho crawled inside. The ground was dry. The air was still. He could hear the rain falling on the leaves above, but not a single drop reached him. He lay down on a bed of soft moss and closed his eyes. He slept for 4 hours. When he woke up, he felt like a different person. The next few weeks were the most important of Taiho's life. He taught others what he had learned. At first, only Mingihana and Sunwoo knew the secret. But slowly, carefully, they brought in more people. 1 or 2 at a time. Only people they trusted. Only people who could keep quiet. The shelters grew throughout the camp. Some were built into the bases of large trees, hidden among the roots. Some were woven into thick bushes, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Some were underground, covered by layers of living plants that hid the entrances completely. The Velith walked past these shelters every day and saw nothing. The shelters were part of the jungle. They were not structures. They were not buildings. They were just plants doing what plants do. But they were so much more than that. Inside the shelters, the humans rested. They dried their clothes. They slept without shivering. They talked quietly about their homes and their families and the lives they missed. For the first time since they arrived on Orth 7, they felt like people again. Sun Wu changed during this time. His anger was still there, but it was different now. It was not burning him up from inside anymore. It was fuel for something bigger. "I did not believe you," he said to Taiho one night. They were sitting inside the rock shelter watching the rain through a small gap in the vines. "I thought you were a fool. I thought the Velith would find us and kill us all." "They might still find us," Taiho said. Sun Wu shook his head. "No, they are not looking for this. They are looking for walls and tools and things they understand. They do not understand the jungle. They hate it. They stay inside their buildings with their machines and their lights. They never look at the plants. They never see what is right in front of them." He paused. Then he said something that surprised Taiho. "You have given us something, brother. You have given us hope." Taiho did not know what to say. He had not thought of it that way. He had only been trying to survive. He had only been trying to solve a problem. But Sun Wu was right. The shelters were more than just places to sleep. They were proof that the humans were not beaten. They were proof that the humans could still think and create and fight back, even without weapons or freedom. Every time a prisoner crawled into a dry space and lay down on soft moss, they were winning a small victory against the VH, and small victories add up. Hannah started a quiet healing practice inside one of the larger shelters. She could not save everyone, but she saved some. She cleaned wounds properly. She treated fevers with plants that Minji identified as medicine. She gave people reasons to keep going. Mingi mapped the jungle around the camp. She learned which plants were safe and which were deadly. She found sources of clean water hidden in the roots of certain trees. She discovered fruits that were actually good to eat, not like the tasteless paste the Velith provided. The humans were becoming part of the jungle. They were learning its secrets and making them their own. Commander Dreth noticed that something had changed. The prisoners were not dying as fast as before. They were working harder. They seemed less broken. He ordered surprise inspections, but the guards found nothing. They walked right past the shelters without seeing them. The jungle kept its secrets. One night, Taiho sat in his shelter and counted the weeks since he had arrived on Orth 7. It had been almost 9 months now. He thought about the person he had been when he first stepped off the transport ship. That person had been afraid and confused and ready to give up. He was not that person anymore. He looked at his hands. They were rough and scarred from work, but they were strong. They had built something amazing. They had created life from nothing. They had turned the jungle into an ally. Outside, the rain continued to fall. It would never stop falling on this planet. But Taiho did not mind anymore. The rain was not his enemy. The rain made the vines grow. The rain kept the leaves green. The rain was helping him. He smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow, he would teach more prisoners how to grow their own shelters. Tomorrow, the network would expand. Tomorrow, the Velith would walk past another piece of human resistance and never know it was. There, the jungle was fighting for them now, and the Velith had no idea. 3 months after the first shelter was grown, Camp 14 had changed in ways that no one could see from the outside. The Velith saw the same thing they had always seen: tired prisoners in torn tents, mud everywhere, broken humans waiting to die. They saw what they expected to see, so they never looked deeper. But underneath the surface, a revolution was growing. There were now 72 hidden shelters throughout the camp. Some were small, meant for 1 or 2 people. Others were large enough to hold 20. The humans moved between them through paths hidden by hanging vines and thick bushes. They had created a secret world right under the noses of their captors. Taiho had become something he never expected to be. He was a leader. He did not give orders. He did not demand obedience. He simply taught, and people followed. They followed because he had given them something precious. He had given them a reason to believe that tomorrow could be better than today. But with hope came danger. The more people knew the secret, the greater the chance that someone would talk. The greater the chance that the Velith would discover what was happening. That chance came on a cold morning, and the rain had finally stopped for a few hours. "Commander," Dreth ordered a full inspection of the camp. Not a normal inspection. This time, every guard was involved. They searched tents. They dug through piles of mud. They overturned rocks and cut through bushes. They were looking for something. Someone had told them something. Taiho watched from the work line, his heart beating fast. He did not know who had talked or what they had said, but he knew that this was the moment of truth. If the Velith found the shelters, everything would be over. The guards searched for 3 hours. They walked past the rock formation where Taiho had built his first shelter. They pushed through the bushes where 20 people slept in hidden spaces. They stood on top of underground chambers without knowing what was beneath their feet. They found nothing. The shelters were too perfect. They were too much a part of the jungle. The guards were looking for human construction, and there was no human construction to find. There were only plants, only vines, only the endless green growth that covered everything on this planet. When the search was over, Commander Dreth was angry. Taiho had never seen him show emotion before. But now his gray face was darker than usual, and his black eyes were narrow and cold. He walked through the camp till he stood in front of Taiho. The other prisoners watched from a distance, afraid to come closer. "Something has changed," Dreth said. His voice was low and dangerous. "My guards tell me that the prisoners are healthier, that they work better, that they seem stronger. This should not be possible." Taiho kept his eyes on the ground. "We are grateful for what you give us, Commander. Do not lie to me, human." Dreth grabbed Taiho's chin and forced his head up. "I know you are doing something. I do not know what it is yet, but I will find out. And when I do, you will wish you had died in the first week." He released Taiho and stepped back. But he did not walk away. Instead, he gave an order that made Taiho's blood run cold. "Burn the jungle around the camp. 100 meters in every direction. Leave nothing green standing." The guards moved immediately. They had weapons that shot fire. Within an hour, the jungle at the edge of the camp was burning. Smoke filled the air. Animals screamed as they ran from the flames. The green world that Taiho had learned to love was dying all around him, but the fire stopped at the edge of the camp. The Velith would not burn their own buildings, and the shelters closest to the center of the camp were too well hidden to be affected by the distant flames. When the fire died down, there was a ring of black ash around Camp 14. The jungle had been pushed back. Many of the outer shelters were gone, but the heart of the network survived. That night, Taiho called a meeting in the largest shelter. 50 people crowded into the underground space. Their faces were lit by a single glowing fungus that Minji had discovered. The air was thick with tension. "They know something is happening," Taiho said. "They do not know what, but they are suspicious. From now on, we must be even more careful." "Careful?" Sun Wu's voice was angry. "They burned the jungle. They killed the land. How can we be careful when they are willing to destroy everything?" "Because we must," Taiho said. "We have come too far to fail now." An older woman named Yuna spoke up. She had been one of the first to join Taiho's group. "What if we do not just hide? What if we do something more?" The shelter went silent. Everyone knew what she meant, but no one had said it out loud until now. Taiho thought for a long moment. Then he said, "What did you have in mind?" The conversation that followed changed everything. They talked about the jungle that had been burned. They talked about how fast plants grew on this planet. They talked about the vines that could split rocks and the roots that could break through metal. They talked about the fact that the Velith controlled the camp with machines, and machines needed electricity, and electricity needed wires, and wires could be damaged by growing things. By the time the sun rose, they had a plan. Not just a plan for survival anymore. A plan for resistance. A plan for escape. It would take time. It would take patience. It would take courage. But for the first time, the humans were not just enduring. They were fighting back. A week later, Commander Dreth came to inspect the worksite where Taiho was digging. The Velith leader seemed even more frustrated than before. The productivity numbers were good, but something was still wrong. He could feel it. He stopped in front of Taiho and stared down at him with those empty black eyes. "What have you done, human?" Taiho met his gaze. He was not afraid anymore. "We adapted, Commander." "Isn't that what livestock does?" Dreth hit him. The blow was hard enough to split Taiho's lip and send him stumbling backward. Blood ran down his chin and dripped onto the mud, but Taiho did not fall. He stood his ground and looked at Dreth with steady eyes. Something amazing happened then. The other prisoners stopped working. They put down their tools. They stood up straight. Sunwoo stepped forward. Then Minji. Then Hannah. Then dozens more. They did not attack. They did not speak. They just stood there, watching Dreth with eyes that had no fear in them. Dreth looked around at the silent crowd of prisoners. For the first time, Taiho saw something in those black eyes that might have been confusion. Or maybe fear. The commander said nothing. He turned and walked away, his guards hurrying to follow him. When he was gone, Sunwoo put his hand on Taiho's shoulder. "You are bleeding, brother." Taiho wiped the blood from his mouth and smiled. It was worth it. "Did you see his face?" Sunwoo nodded slowly. "He is afraid. He does not know why yet, but he is afraid." The prisoners went back to work. But something was different now. They walked taller. They moved with purpose. They were not livestock anymore. They were an army. And the roots they had planted were growing. Deeper every day, the message from Velith High Command arrived on a transport ship that landed in the middle of the night. Commander Dreth read it 3 times before he believed it. Investigators were coming. The High Council had noticed that Camp 14 was producing more minerals than any other camp on Orth 7, but losing fewer workers. This should have been good news. Instead, it made the Council suspicious. Healthy prisoners were dangerous prisoners. Efficient workers were thinking workers. Something was wrong with Camp 14. The Council wanted to know what. Dreth stood at the window of his office and looked out at the camp. The jungle had grown back faster than he expected. It was already pressing against the burned perimeter, reaching toward the buildings with green fingers. The rain fell in endless sheets. The darkness was thick and wet. He did not understand what was happening. He had run prison camps for 30 years. He had broken thousands of humans. But these prisoners were different. They looked at him with eyes that should have been empty, but were not. They moved through the rain like they belonged in it. They smiled when they should have been crying. Dreth hated them. He hated them more than he had ever hated anything. The investigators would arrive in 5 days. He had 5 days to find out what the humans were hiding. 5 days to break them once and for all. He did not know that Taiho's people had already learned about the investigators. A prisoner who worked as a cleaner in the Velith buildings had overheard the conversation and passed the information through the network. By morning, everyone knew. The escape plan was moved forward. For 3 months, the humans had been preparing. They had grown vine tunnels that stretched from the camp into the deep jungle. They had mapped routes through the trees that the Velith could not follow. They had collected food and medicine and supplies, hiding them in living caches that looked like ordinary bushes. But the most important, preparation was invisible. Throughout the camp, roots had been growing underneath the ground. Minji had found a type of plant that sent out runners beneath the soil, spreading in all directions. The humans had guided these roots toward every piece of Velith technology they could reach. Sensor posts, power cables, communication towers. The roots wrapped around them slowly, patiently. Waiting. Now, it was time to wake them up. On the 4th night before the investigators were supposed to arrive, Taiho gathered his closest allies in the underground shelter. There were 20 of them now, the core of the resistance. They had become a family. "Tomorrow night," Taiho said. "We move at midnight. Is everyone ready?" Sunwoo nodded. He had been training the others in how to move quietly, how to fight if necessary, how to survive in the jungle. "The tunnel teams are ready. Everyone knows their route." Minji held up a small bundle of seeds. "When we give the signal, the roots will grow. I have tested it." They will respond to the chemicals in these seeds. Within an hour, every sensor post in the camp will be dead. Hannah had organized the medical supplies. We have enough to treat wounds and fevers for 2 weeks. After that, we need to find help. There is a colony on the other side of the mountains, said a man named Ginho. He had been a navigator before his capture. I have been calculating the distance. It will take 5 days of travel through the jungle. Maybe 7 if the weather is bad. The weather is always bad, someone said, and everyone laughed. It was the kind of laughter that came from people who had been through terrible things together. The kind of laughter that said, we are still here and we are still human. Taiho looked around at their faces. These people had been strangers a year ago. Now, he would die for them. He knew they would die for him too. Whatever happens tomorrow, he said, remember that we already won. They tried to break us. They failed. They took everything from us, and we built something new from nothing. Even if we do not make it to the colony, even if they catch us and kill us, they cannot take that away. We proved that humans cannot be owned. We proved that we are more than livestock. No one spoke. The words hung in the air like a prayer. Then Sun Wu said, we will make it. All of us. I did not survive 3 years of war to die in a jungle. And neither did any of you. The night of the escape was the darkest night Taiho had ever seen on Orth 7. The rain was so heavy that you could not see more than 2 meters in any direction. The clouds blocked all light from the moons and stars. It was perfect. At midnight, Minji crushed the seeds and scattered them near the main root network. The effect was almost immediate. Throughout the camp, underground roots began to grow at impossible speed. They pushed through soil and wrapped around cables. They squeezed sensor posts until the metal cracked. They crawled up walls and through cracks and into places where plants had never been. The lights in the aesthetic buildings flickered. Warning alarms went silent. The electric fences that surrounded the camp sparked and died, and the humans began to move. They slipped out of their shelters, into the vine tunnels. 300 prisoners moving in complete silence through passages that the Velith would never find. The jungle swallowed them one by one, taking them into its green darkness like a mother hiding her children. Commander. Dreth felt the power go out and knew something was very wrong. He ran outside with his guards, but they could see nothing in the rain. Their flashlights died. Their weapons would not charge. Everything electronic was failing. He screamed for the prisoners to be stopped, but his voice was lost in the storm. He ran toward the prison tents and found them empty. He ran to the work site and found no one. He ran to the edge of the camp and saw only jungle, pressing in from all sides like a living wall. Taiho was the last to leave. He stood at the mouth of the tunnel and watched Commander Dreth stumble through the camp, screaming orders that no one could follow. The Velith soldiers were tripping over roots that had not been there an hour ago. Vines were pulling down guard towers. The jungle was swallowing the camp piece by piece. Then Dreth saw him. The Velith commander ran toward Taiho, his gray face twisted with rage. He still had a weapon in his hand, one of the older types that did not need charging. He raised it and pointed it at Taiho's chest. You will die for this, human. Taiho did not run. He stood in the rain and looked at the being who had tormented him for a year. He thought about the friends who had died, the people who had suffered, the nights of cold and hunger and fear. Then he gestured to the jungle behind him. 300 humans were disappearing into its depths, following paths of living vine that would close behind them. They were already beyond the Velith's reach. You tried to take everything from us, Taiho said. His voice was calm. Our tools, our shelters, our dignity. You called us livestock. You said we could not build. You said we could only endure and suffer and die. You will still die, Dreth snarled. All of you. We will hunt you through this jungle. We will find every one of you. No, you will not, Taiho smiled. You do not understand the jungle. You hate it. You fear it. But we have become part of it. It is our home now, and you will never find us. Dreth fired his weapon, but a wall of vines burst from the ground between them, blocking the shot. By the time he pushed through them, Taiho was gone. There was only jungle where a prisoner had stood. Only rain and darkness and the endless green. The Velith searched for weeks. They sent soldiers into the jungle. Most of them never came back. The ones who did return spoke of paths that moved, shelters that disappeared, and shadows that watched from the trees. They never found the humans. 6 months later, a colony ship arrived at the settlement on the other side of the mountains. They found 300 refugees living in harmony with the jungle. They had built a village of living plants, fed by streams they had redirected and lit by glowing fungi they had cultivated. They were healthy and strong and free. The story spread across the galaxy. The humans who had turned their cage into a garden and walked out of it. The prisoners who had become one with a hostile world. The people who had proven that even when everything was taken from them, could create something new. Taiho stood at the edge of the new village and watched the sun set through the trees. Minji stood beside him, along with Sunwoo and Hannah and Ginho and all the others who had survived. "What happens now?" Hannah asked. Taiho thought about it for a long moment. Then he said, "We tell the story. We tell everyone what we did. We show them that no matter how strong the enemy is, humans can survive. Humans can adapt. Humans can win." "And the Velith?" Sunwoo asked. "What about them?" Taiho smiled. It was a different smile than before. It was the smile of a free man. "Let them come. Let them try to break us again. They do not understand what we are. They never will.